The Rasuwa Ghati border crossing between Nepal and Tibet was a massive 5-story concrete complex. When the wall of water hit, the people standing outside had less than 10 seconds to run. The entire structure simply vanished into the mud. The immediate human toll is staggering. Over 30 police officers stationed near the river were swept away. Deep inside the surrounding mountains, 60 hydroelectric workers remain trapped in pitch-black tunnels, their exit blocked by a solid wall of river debris. And out on the trails, 105 Indian pilgrims heading toward Mount Kailash are officially missing. Helicopters rushed to the scene to pull survivors from the valley, but pilots were forced to turn around and fly back empty. They couldn't land because the physical ground they relied on had been entirely erased. In a single morning, a bustling artery of international trade and a sacred spiritual corridor were erased. Families across multiple borders are now desperately calling phones that go straight to voicemail. The flood quickly morphed into a mountain-crushing tsunami. It roared down the Bote Koshi River, tearing through the gorge and swallowing entire downstream villages. But as district officials began to assess the scale of the flooding, they confirmed a detail that didn't make sense. There was absolutely no rain that day. The skies were clear, there were no sudden cloudbursts, and no monsoon storms had passed through the region to swell the rivers. If the weather was completely calm, where did a devastating wall of water come from? To find the source, we have to trace the river backward, moving up the steep valley, crossing the Tibetan border, and climbing miles into the high-altitude peaks of the Himalayas. Here, far above human settlements, we find the culprit, a massive glacial lake. As global temperatures rise, melting ice accumulates in these high-altitude basins. This is what scientists call a GLOF, or glacial lake outburst flood. Notice that the water here isn't held back by solid bedrock. It's contained by a moraine, a fragile pile of loose rocks and ice. As melting ice fills the basin, rising water exerts immense pressure, pushing the natural dam to its breaking point, turning the lake into a ticking bomb. These high-altitude reservoirs hang miles above the valley floor, held back by nothing more than loose dirt and gravity, waiting for a single trigger. On the morning of August 26th, that trigger finally occurred. At roughly 8:30 a.m., deep inside Tibet, a massive disruption shattered the silence of the peaks. A 4.4 magnitude earthquake struck the area. The seismic shockwave hit the strained moraine dam, instantly shattering the fragile wall of ice and dirt holding back the lake. Millions of gallons of water immediately tore down the mountain. Over the next 30 minutes, this surge absorbed boulders, uprooted trees, and churned up topsoil, transforming from clear water into a heavy slurry of mud. The physics of the descent perfectly align with the disaster timeline. Traveling at high speeds down the steep gradient, the crust of the flood slammed into the Rasuwa Ghati checkpoint exactly at 9 a.m. This 30-minute chain reaction proves that the devastation was completely independent of the local weather, a tsunami born in the mountains, not the clouds. The physical mechanics of the flood explain how the water arrived, but the deeper tragedy is that this disaster was a declared, expected outcome. Exactly 13 months prior, a nearly identical glacial flood tore through this exact same route. It carried enough force to completely destroy the historic friendship bridge connecting the two nations. Following that incident, international scientists and satellite monitoring agencies produced detailed investigations. They explicitly warned local governments that the structural integrity of the mountains above was compromised, and a repeat outburst flood was imminent. The water took 30 minutes to travel from the broken dam to the valley floor. A standard early warning siren system requires roughly 10 minutes to clear an evacuation zone. Yet, despite knowing the risk, not a single siren was installed in the valley. The truck drivers, local police, and pilgrims at the border were killed by administrative silence and bureaucratic negligence. Hundreds of similar, unmonitored water bombs are currently suspended across the entire warming Himalayan range. They directly threaten millions of people in Indian regions like Sikkim, Himachal, and Uttarakhand. Meanwhile, travel agencies and authorities continue to funnel tourists and Shiva devotees through these well-documented high-risk valleys without requiring a single safety briefing or risk assessment. If you have family members traveling along the Kailash route, The Indian Embassy in Kathmandu has established emergency contact lines for missing persons. You can reach them at +977 98513 16807 and +977 98512 8945. Heroic rescue operations are still underway by local forces. Communication lines are severed, but missing does not necessarily mean lost. Stranded individuals are still being recovered alive from the cut-off valleys. Nature fills the lakes and breaks the ice, but human negligence guarantees the massacre. As the ice continues to melt, the only terrifying question left is which Himalayan bomb will detonate next.